Tabletop miniatures. You know them, you love them. You pick out your force, you buy your models, you assemble them, you paint them, and you get them on a table ready to play. That's just step one. If you're like me when you first started playing, you just take them down to your friendly local gaming store, set them up on the pre-made table, and you're ready to go. But what happens when you're the host? When people want to come round to yours and you maybe demonstrate them a game, or they bring their force down to play against you? Well, you need to have a board, you need to have terrain, you need to have things set up. What if you don't have access to a 3D printer? Where do you look from there? Do you buy MDF sets that you build yourself? Do you buy pre-made stuff? Do you just lay down some books and some egg cartons and call it a day? Well, as part of this small series of kind of scratch-built terrain, I'll be taking you through on how to turn your board from a boring green MDF scattered mess to something with a little bit more personality. The items you use can be picked up at your local hobby shop, your local stationery, or anywhere that sells crafty bits and bobs like that. So we should be building some dock walkways out of lollipop sticks, dowels, a bit of glue and a bit of paint. And you'll see by the end of the video how effective this can be at really bringing your board to life. First, lay out your lollipop sticks. Variation is good. If you can get some of the large, like tongue depressor ones, regular lollipop sticks, or something a little bit smaller, these will give you different variations on board sizes. Once you've done that, get one of your dowels to the appropriate size to the piece of terrain that you want, and cut the next one to match, so you've got two that are equal. Next, grab a hacksaw or some kind of cutting device and cut it down to the length that you need. Once this step is completed, I like to lay out my model and 2 or 3 different boards just to gauge the width and to make sure that I'm cutting them at the right length. As you can see here, I'm using a Rat King from Malifaux, which sits on a 40mm base, and by eyeballing it I can see he will sit nicely on this dock without any hindrance. Next comes the boring part. Well, boring part, but also something that requires some safety. As you can see here, I'm using my snips to remove the rounded ends of the lollipop stick, but you've got to be careful. If you squeeze too hard, the rounded end will fly off in a given direction, and believe me, I've had a few close calls with my eyeballs already. I find the best thing to do is to grip it one side, squeeze down hard, flip it over, grip it the other side, and just wiggle it to and fro. Eventually it'll come free. If it leaves behind any splinters, just use your snips to clean these bits up. Well, after that, just keep on cutting till you have all the boards that you need. Before the gluing process, you can snip some of the corners off in the board to make them a little bit more misshapen, cutting little triangles out either end, or cutting them down the middle and just ripping with a pair of snips. Just gives it a little bit more makeshift, a little bit more character. So when it comes to adhesives, I would recommend this Gorilla Glue. It's relatively thick, dries pretty clear, and when it's set is absolutely rock solid. You can use a glue gun for this, as I have done in the past, but it tends to leave these annoying stringy pieces which often take a lot of time at the end to clear up. So after you've glued all your boards down, I'd leave it about 24 hours to dry, just so you know it's absolutely rock solid, and it'll be ready for its base coat. You don't need any kind of special paint for this, just any kind of black acrylic will do. This particular brand though, did take a couple of applications as it was quite thin. However, you can find these paints at almost any hobby shop, and they're all quite relatively cheap. So you don't need to skim on the coats, go crazy, get a nice thick black layer down first. Now, because I'm a dum-dum, I forgot to do this step first. But if you get some kind of metallic scraper, such as a moulding putty tool or something of a like, even the prong of a fork will do, you can carve lines into the boards to give them that more natural wood effect. As you can see, the boards I haven't done yet just look a little bit too flat and look more like chipboard or MDF than planks you'd find out in the jungle. So just use the tip of your tool to carve these lines in. Straight lines, curvy lines, knots, you name it. Just make them random and non-uniform. This can take a while, but I feel the effect really is worth it in the long run, because when you apply paint, your base coat will run down into these recesses, and when it comes to your dry brush, these dark recesses will still be visible and gives that more authentic wood feel. Once your base coat is down, if you feel the need to, you can add another coat just in case. You might end up spotting some areas where the black paint has settled and hasn't been covered by any brown, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. Then you need to mix yourself a light brown colour. I've gone for an almost orangey brown in this, and it looks quite stark when on the palette, but don't worry. Using some kitchen roll or some tissue, wick away any excess off your brush, getting it not completely dry like a dry brushing model, but enough to cover the boards. It's quite important to follow the direction of the board going from top to bottom. If you go from left to right, it will leave an unnatural pattern and it just won't look right. But just go from top to bottom on one side, flip the object over, and then do top to bottom on the other side, giving a nice even coat on every board. Once this is dried, you might need to do this again, just to really lighten it up and to bring out those highlights, which leave stark contrast to the dark knots below. Once this is done, you'll be left with something like this. As you can see, I've built another set. These ones are much wider and I've put some dowels as legs to raise them up a little bit. But you can take this as far as you want to. I've used some resin for puddles and some small green tufts of grass to give it that left in the jungle and an abandoned feel. Scatter a few rocks, and if you have any gaps that look a little bit too big, then put some other planks over it. Just cut some excess boards, lay them over, and there you go. It gives it that somewhat ramshackle look. As you can see, these wooden walkways look very in keeping and in theme with the board I'm trying to make. Eventually, I'd like to add some rivers or some streams to run under these, so it gives it that theme of elevation and keeping out of the muddy marshes of the bayou. The best thing about these, if you build a handful, you can use them in any kind of formation. They're very modular and you can cross parts over to make large sections. You could even bisect the map with one giant straight one if you wish. But if you make some with different elevations and different heights, but as you can see, they don't need to be single straight ones. Looking at this picture on screen now, you can see that there are even wider ones. It'll just affect the number of dowels you use and just finding some way to connect them all together. If you're feeling brave enough, you can even move on to stairs. But that's it for the end of this video. Hopefully this has been a nice quick tutorial on how to turn some lollipop sticks and dowels into some usable terrain. I really look forward to adding to this bayou map and really giving it some character and just moving it on from the boring out of the box feel it currently has now. So please subscribe to keep up to date with any future videos we have. I've got lots of ideas in store for these, such as modular rivers, using aquatic terrain to build realistic jungles, and many more. Until then, thank you for watching. This has been Bang Average Gaming, and remember, it's okay to be mid-table.